You're here to meet with Prime Minister Albanese about regional security concerns. When it comes to China, what is your biggest concern?
Well, look, I mean, we really want to make sure there's peace and stability in the broader Indo-Pacific region, and it's become an increasingly contested and competitive space in recent years, and it's in all of our interests to make sure that we maintain peace and stability, and that will be part of the conversations I have with Prime Minister Albanese, as well as obviously also thinking about how we continue to deepen the economic ties between New Zealand and Australia. And importantly, we have very strong people-to-people connections between our two great countries, and so there's been some fantastic progress in that relationship as well. So that's really the focus. But again, I'm a new Prime Minister of New Zealand, and really today is about building great rapport and relationship. We have no greater friend, no greater ally, no greater partner than Australia, and so it's making sure that we are going to continue to deepen and build out this great relationship.
And you talked about the importance and interest in building out relationships with allies, including Australia, Canada, the UK, the US. Does that mean joining AUKUS?
Well, again, we will obviously explore Pillar 2 as part of AUKUS, and we'll have those conversations and continue to understand where that's going and what the opportunities may be for New Zealand in that. And obviously we'll look at that through the course of next year.
Do you think the changing landscape, which you sort of alluded to geostrategically, it makes more sense now?
Well, look, I mean, we've always been open to exploring it under the previous government and my government as well, and it's just a question of making sure it's about new technologies, it's about how it gets shaped up, and if there's an opportunity for New Zealand, we're very open to looking into and considering it.
The previous Labor government had sought on various points to somewhat mollify the relationship with China. Do you think you'll be taking a tougher position? Well,
look, I think our position is pretty clear and consistent under successive governments, which is we acknowledge that we have a large trading relationship with China, but we also have a long-standing relationship that's been in place for over 50 years. And what we do is consistently raise concerns and differences that we may have with China in terms of different values that we may have, and we do that consistently and well, I think, under successive governments. But also it's a relationship that we've had for a long period of time, and we're going to continue to make sure that is deepened and enhanced as well.
Yeah, how do you characterise the balancing of that key trading and diplomatic relationship, and is there more leverage now that we do see that serious economic and structural slowdown in China?
Yeah, look, I mean, New Zealand is a country of 5 million people. We are a trading country, and for us to do well in the world, we need to be able to do business with everyone around the world. And so we think there's a world of tremendous opportunities. Yes, we have a large trading relationship with China. We have an important relationship, obviously, here in Australia, but we see a world of huge opportunity for New Zealand, whether it be in Southeast Asia, whether it be in India, and even our recently signed UK free trade agreement. So, the message is very clear. New Zealand's under new management. We're open for business, and we're out in the world hustling because we want to build relationships with everybody, and we obviously understand that there are trading and security components to some of those relationships too.
The RBNZ has been at the forefront of the rate hike cycle, but there is still this potential risk that more needs to be done. Some of that comes from the heat coming from immigration. We've seen immigration reform measures announced here. Is that something that you're considering, and what does that potentially look like?
Yeah, look, I mean, we are in a place where we've had 129,000 net migration to New Zealand over the last year, and that is an elevated level of immigration and something that I'd say is not sustainable ultimately. We want to make sure our immigration levels are consistent with our economic agenda, but also we have the infrastructure in place to support it. But New Zealand is also dealing with a situation where we had a government that increased government spending by 80%. It actually hired 15,000 more bureaucrats. It also delivered, collected $100 million a day more in tax, and yet delivered worse outcomes. And so that high level of government domestic spending has driven domestic inflation, which in turn has raised our interest rates, slowed our economy down, and risks rising unemployment. And so my government in the first 4 weeks has been incredibly focused on dealing with the number one job that we have to do, which is to tackle inflation and get it down below 3% again. And so we've got a single-minded focus on doing that. So if we can lower inflation, we lower the interest rates, we keep the economy growing, we keep people in employment. And so that's been a lot of what our 100-day plan has been about, is making sure we rebuild the economy, lower the cost of living, and put actions in place to do that.
That makes the mini-budget something of a delicate balancing act. What are we expecting today?
Yeah, look, I mean, what we have today arriving in New Zealand is what we call our half-yearly economic and fiscal update, and that is it will give us a sense of the books that we have inherited from the previous government and where those finances are actually sitting. And then what we're doing within the 3 to 4 weeks that we've been in government is saying what quick mitigations and actions can we do to put ourselves on a pathway to improve our economic settings, obviously shaping for our big budget that happens in May next year. So, for us it's just, recognising if there's things that we can do, and we have taken actions already to actually try and improve the situation, we'll do that, but otherwise we're setting up for budget in May.
Treasury is quite concerned given the subdued or surprisingly subdued subdued, as they say, GDP numbers from the third quarter that we got last week. How concerned are you about underlying weakness in the New Zealand economy?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've had 3 of our last 4 quarters in negative growth, and that is, something that is really challenging. And that, again, is why we need to tackle the underlying short-term problem we've got around inflation. But ultimately, we need to get our economy to be more productive and to actually get it into a growth mindset. And so that's a lot of what we're doing. How do we do that? We know we've got work to do in building a world-class education system. We need to make sure we're investing more in science and technology. We need to make sure we've got modern, reliable infrastructure, getting rid of red tape that exists in the business community, and importantly, international connections, and that's why we're here today as well.
What's going to be the biggest challenge for you going into next year? And I know you obviously come from that corporate background. How much are you applying sort of a CEO mindset to your new job?
Well, look, I mean, we've got to deliver for the New Zealand people. Our government is all about delivery. That's what New Zealanders voted for us on October the 14th. They want things to get done. They're over all the rhetoric, they're over all the language and the words. They want us to improve their daily lives. And that's why we've been very fixated on rebuild the economy, restore law and order, deliver better public services. And so that is the focus of our government. We've put together 3 days into it a very, very comprehensive 100-day plan of 49 actions. That's our initial focus to get us through to March 8th, and then we're setting forward on that basis for the next 3 years.
What do you think is the biggest risk when it comes to making good on those deliverables?
It's just making sure that we understand, that we're working with the public service in particular to make sure our public services are actually delivering outcomes and results for New Zealanders. A lot of it is actually getting our economic settings right so that people are encouraged to take on opportunity and to go out there and take a risk and actually start a business and to grow a business, because they actually have certainty from the government about the settings that are going to be in place, and they feel that they can do that. So, there's a number of things that we have to work on. In the economic space, it's a lot about what we call, it's really about improving productivity. In the social issue space, it's really about what we call social investment, making powerful, targeted investments to help those that are less fortunate so they can lift up and participate in all of that as well.
And the geopolitical risk, do you think that's a big one for next year?
Look, it's certainly become a more volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous sort of space, a lot more contested, a lot more competitive in the Pacific region. It is in Australia's interest and New Zealand's interest to make sure that we have peace and stability and prosperity, and that's a lot of what we'll talk about today.